Israel has launched fresh attacks in the last few hours as the war with Iran and its supporters shows no signs of letting up. Several people are reported to have been killed in Lebanon on Wednesday as Israel targets the offices of Hezbollah in Beirut. The organisation is a key ally of Tehran and has sent rockets into Israel. Israel has also launched new strikes on Iran itself. The Israel Defense Forces say one of its fighter planes has shot down Iranian Air Force jet over Tehran. A US-based human rights agency says the civilian death toll in Iran has now passed 1,000. Qatar has been targeted by 2 Iranian missiles. One was intercepted and the other struck a US airbase. The UK has chartered a commercial flight out of Oman's capital to bring stranded nationals home late on Wednesday. France has made similar plans. Meanwhile, stock markets across Asia are having a tough time, with exchanges in South Korea and Thailand being temporarily suspended. Now, as we have mentioned, Beirut has been rocked by explosions on Wednesday morning. Israel says it is targeting the Iranian-backed Hezbollah military group. Several other blasts have been reported across the Lebanese capital in the last couple of hours. Hezbollah has itself been launching missiles at Israel. And these are the latest pictures from Tehran. You can see plumes of smoke over the city after strikes which the Israel Defense Forces claim are targeting military bases.
Signs of another night of strikes in Iran as smoke billows above Tehran. The Iranian Red Crescent says more than 700 people have died in the US-Israel offensive since Saturday. And in Lebanon, more scenes of destruction as Israel continues to target Iran-backed Hezbollah compounds. The US says that more than 2,000 targets have been hit in Iran so far, with more than 50,000 troops taking part in this joint operation. Last night, the American military named the first 4 of its troops to be killed. US Central Command said 6 died when an unmanned aircraft system struck a tactical operations centre in Kuwait on Sunday. It says that its action will only intensify.
You're going to really begin to perceive a change in the scope and in the intensity of these attacks as, frankly, the 2 most powerful air forces in the world take apart this terroristic regime and defang it and take away its ability to threaten its neighbors or hide behind a zone of immunity that allows them to develop their nuclear ambitions.
But Iran is striking back. Warnings issued in Israel last night. Israeli forces intercepting Iranian fire. People flee in Dubai as plumes of smoke rise high from an attack on a car park next to the US consulate. And the sky above Erbil in northern Iraq is lit up as Iranian drones are fired at. Iran is standing firm in its retaliation.
What we are doing is targeting the places where attacks against Iran are instigated. This conforms to the international law. We are subjected to military aggression. We have the right and duty to defend. When military actions is being taken against us from the bases in regional countries, what are we supposed to do other than defending ourselves?
The UK has begun what it calls defensive operations. A fighter jet from RAF at Criterion, Cyprus, shoots down an Iranian missile over Jordan in this footage from the Ministry of Defence. The Prime Minister says other resources like these helicopters will be sent to the region along with the air defence destroyer HMS Dragon. But criticism that this may be too little too late came from the US President yesterday.
The UK has been very, very uncooperative. So we are very surprised. This is not Winston Churchill that we're dealing with.
The strain on the so-called special relationship not echoed by the UK government.
Look, words will be said, but we've got to look at the actions, and the Prime Minister is working closely with the Americans. He's been clear that the American military are able to make use of UK bases if they are going to do defensive action that will take out missiles that could end up causing harm to British civilians in the Middle East or to others.
A rescue in Iran after a strike. The regime here remains in place whilst the attacks continue, with no clear indication from the US of what will lead to the end of this war. Alison Freeman, BBC News.
Let's talk now to our Middle East correspondent, Yolande Nell, who's in Jerusalem. Yolande, just bring us up to date on the latest in regards to what Israel is doing against Iran and Lebanon.
So the Israeli military said this morning that it was carrying out what it called broad-scale attacks on Tehran, on government sites there. Then we had this news a short time ago. They'd actually shot down an Iranian fighter jet in the skies over the Iranian capital with one of their F-35 warplanes. The first time they say that has happened. Otherwise, overnight, the Israelis saying that they have gone after what they call military command sites, the headquarters of the Iranian internal security. And, you know, the US figures that came out last night really underscoring, I think, the intensity of the firepower that is being used by the US and Israel in this joint operation against Iran, with the Americans saying that close to 2,000 targets had been hit since Saturday, and that Iran had fired some 500 missiles and about 2,000 drones. We've certainly seen more Iranian missiles incoming overnight. The Israeli air defenses intercepted some missiles over Jerusalem. The thuds of those could be heard after warning sirens went off for people here early this morning. Israeli air defenses also being used in the north of the country against incoming fire from the Lebanese armed group Hezbollah. And we've also had attacks, the Israeli military saying, going on in the southern suburbs of Beirut in the east of Lebanon. And also now they've told more villages in the south of Lebanon, told people there to leave their homes. It's now about 80 villages that have been told they have to evacuate. And already a day ago, the Israeli military said it sent additional ground forces across the border, that it was taking additional areas there. You keep getting these comments from Israeli military leaders basically saying that it was a huge mistake by Hezbollah, the Lebanese armed group, backed by Iran, to enter into this war.
Yolande, am I right in saying that the majority of Israelis are behind its government in terms of what they're doing in Iran? Are you sensing any sort of conflict in public opinion there at all?
I mean, really, it may be surprising to people outside that, given the fact that people here are living with so many, warning sirens, incoming missile fire. You've got schools closed, most businesses closed, really normal life on hold once again for people in Israel after 2 years of the Gaza war. That nevertheless, there is strong support here for Israel's military action in Iran, and I think that has actually increased since the war started, despite the fact that you have had at least 10 Israeli civilian casualties as a result of incoming Iranian missile fire. That is really because most Jewish Israelis describe Iran as being a real and immediate threat to them, and they see that there have been military successes so far. They're encouraged too by the close coordination that's going on between Israel and the US.
Thank you, Yolande. That's Yolande Nell speaking to us in Jerusalem. Let's go now to Lina Sinjab in Beirut and Barbara Plett-Usher in Doha. First to you, Lina, what is the latest on what's happening in Lebanon, the impact of Israeli strikes there?
Well, as we heard from Yolande, more and more strikes here in south of Beirut, but also in southern Lebanon. Some of these strikes came without warning against residential areas, including a hotel in some areas that are outside the south of Lebanon, not Hezbollah's stronghold, in areas where IDPs or the people who were targeted in southern Beirut have fled to. So Israeli airstrikes are even following those who are fleeing the conflict, suspecting Hezbollah members to be among them. That was certainly the case in a hotel that was targeted this morning. And, the families who were in the hotel owner, all are saying they were surprised with this attack on them because they were all civilians there. Israel is giving more and more warnings to different locations, but the panic among people is spreading wide. People are worried about what's going to happen next. They don't know where to go. Thousands have fled their homes now, seeking shelters at schools, in the streets, in the open air, but also some people are joining family members across the country to seek safety. This is something that they've lived 15 months ago and they are yet living again today. And the worry is that no idea how long this is going to take and when it's going to end.
If you stay with us, Lena, I'm going to bring Barbara in as well from Doha. Barbara, I read your article this morning on the BBC website about how all red lines have been crossed. This is how the Gulf states are reacting. Can you give us a sense of, how united are they in viewing this war? Are they speaking with one voice, or are there splits?
No, they are speaking with one voice, Namia. I mean, there's a pretty strong feeling here that the Arab countries did not want this war. They tried to stop it with mediation between the United States and Iran, and they're not participating in it. They've told the Americans, you cannot use your military bases, you cannot use our soil, our airspace to hit Iran, and yet the Iranians have unleashed this volley of hundreds of missiles and drones on them that are not only targeting the U.S. military bases, but also civilian infrastructure and severely disrupting the economy. So they have issued a joint statement by the Gulf Cooperation Council on Sunday, and independently they also issue statements pretty much saying the same things, telling Iran that it's making a mistake, that these are treacherous attacks, that it's miscalculated, it's going to become more isolated, there will just be more escalation, they should stop attacking their neighbors, we are not the enemy, but also saying we are going to do everything we can to defend our territory and our citizens, and we reserve the right to respond if that becomes necessary. And at the moment, they're very much focusing on defense. The other day, the Qataris shot down 2 Iranian fighter jets in quite a dramatic development. But they said, again, we are going to do everything we can to prevent external threats. Whether they move on to the offensive is an open question, and what it would look like is another open question. But I think the longer this goes on, the more, and if it continues in this way and doesn't die down, the more that might be considered. What the Iranians seem to be doing is trying to create as much pain in the Gulf as they can, which they can because it's such a crucial economic hub for oil and gas, and they can disrupt that, which they have as well, hoping that the Arab countries will put pressure on the U.S. to stop the war. But it could very well backfire with these countries instead, maybe being drawn more into the U.S. orbit on this war, and perhaps even coordinating more on it. At the moment, as I said, they're very much focused on defense.
We don't know when the end is in sight, but if I can come back to you, Lena, and then I'll come back to Barbara and ask the same question. But if this does escalate, what is the biggest risk or fear that people feel? If I can come to you, Lena, on that in Lebanon.
Well, this is, a small country with weak economy and, no defense power. This is not a country that wants to be dragged into war and have no power to, resist or fight back, especially that as a government, as leadership, they haven't taken the decision to be dragged into this war. In fact, they were trying to make efforts over the past year to negotiate, to find solutions, to force Hezbollah to abide by the ceasefire agreement, disarm Hezbollah. But this is a group that's been armed, trained, and funded by Iran since the 80s, that is really seen by the majority of Lebanese and certainly by the government as acting on behalf of Iran and for the Iranian interest, and in dragging the country into an unnecessary war. The Lebanese people, the economy, the country really cannot afford being dragged into this war. They've made it clear officially. They banned Hezbollah's military and security activities. However, the group is still acting solely for their own decisions and dragging the country into a further conflict. Now there are lots of mediation going on, lots of messages, diplomatic messages going on to have this as contained as possible and not to drag it into a longer war like what the country witnessed in 2024 when Israel almost eliminated all the leadership of Hezbollah and crippled its power and the targeted areas.
And if I can come to you on that, Barbara, what is the biggest risk or fear that the Gulf states face if this escalates?
I think at the moment a huge concern is whether this is going to, the actual war strikes will drag on for quite a long time and really inflict a serious blow on the economy, that this is not going to be a short-term issue. This is very much against the brand of the Arab Gulf, which is stable, secure, welcoming to visitors, to travelers, ease of transit, ease of financial transactions, and of course the oil and gas industry, which is at the core of how this region runs. More broadly, there's a big question about what will happen when the attacks stop. What will Iran look like? President Trump the other day said, the people that we thought we wanted to lead Iran are all dead. Well, that's kind of alarming, I think, for people living next to Iran, wondering who will take over, or will it become chaotic and create long-term instability. These are some of the serious concerns here.
Yeah. Good to get your insights, both of you. Thank you so much. Lina Sinjab there in Beirut and Barbara Plett-Usher in Doha.